Okay, looks like we're live now. And we had no internet all this morning until 3 minutes ago, so here we are. Lucky it all happened. So welcome everybody to a hot day here in Costa Rica. I'm sure some of you are still in the frozen north snows or way south. Okay, without further ado, you're going to watch me sweat through this one, and I think you just have to deal with that. Let's start with our opening chants. Let's chant 3 ohms, Ganesha mantras, Saraswati mantras, Guru mantras, and we start. For right channel, Ganesha, remover of obstacles. Om Gang Ganapate Namaha, Om Gang Ganapate Namaha, Om Gang Ganapate Namaha. For left channel, for opening up the mind to receive the teachings, to become passive, still, and receptive. Blessings of Ma Saraswati. Om Aing Saraswatyaya Namaha, Om Aing Saraswatyaya Namaha, Om Aing Saraswatyaya Namaha. To be fully awake, present moment awareness, slipping into presence, slipping into abiding in your nature, meeting the teachings at the same level. Central channel, Guru Bija, Guru Mantra. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay. So, earlier we had part 1, and this was on the absolute. Now we're going into part 2 on the relative. And this is where, the rubber will meet the road, let's say, because not many of us are practicing at the absolute level. Not many of us are going to be able to make use of direct realization tantra, the way of the Vajra, and so forth. But as we said in the first class, and we will reiterate again and again, we must be able to hold the non-dual view, the view of absolute while working in the relative is extremely important. And we did give you some ways to work in the absolute, which was kind of important, like conduct, etc. These are very, very important ways. So remaining in view and of the absolute and remaining in conduct that flows from that view puts us right in the fruit of the path. And this is the most important way we can understand helping out or helping us stay in the absolute, and ways that we can do that with practice. But of course, we have other ways too of understanding the absolute better. But now we're going to go into the relative. Okay? Those are the main ones we covered. Now, let's look at the relative. Let's go in deep here, and then we can have time for question and answer and really sort this out as much as we can for today. So in the relative sense, we're all connected to base. We know this. Not only connected to it, we arise from it and we are it, but we're not very aware of it. And because we're not very aware of it, we're not able to make much use of it or to live in that experience very well. So the connection to the base has to be realized, and then has to be consciously cultivated in order to express it fully. This is the relative view. Relative view is, yes, we're connected. Yes, I recognize that theoretically. And now that you mention it and you describe what the base is in human experience, I think I've had moments of that, right? Everyone's had that, short or extended, whatever. But then the relative view goes on to say that the connection to base has to be cultivated actively in order for that base to express through us fully at all times. And this is where the relative comes in, right? So, we have this absolute experience and we have the relative. Somebody was talking to me about this online and wrote in and gave a wonderful quote. Let's see if I can dig it up again now, if it's still here, or did I not include it? It was quite good. It was from Jean Klein. And did I put it in there? No, I don't see it. What a shame. It was quite nice. Maybe I can find it again. Anyway, it's that, yeah, the absolute is always what's there. And we have that potentiality to experience it. Let's get this really clear. The absolute is who we are and what we are, but we have the potentiality to experience it. Only the potentiality. It doesn't force itself upon us, and we don't get realized simply by taking birth. And that's the important thing to really get, because we can go around this philosophically like crazy and make ourselves a little loony, thinking that, well, I'm already realized, I'm already in the absolute, I'm already in the absolute view, there's nothing to do. And that you can hold as an absolute practice, and you can work at that level as long as you're really working at that level. As soon as you apply strenuous activity at all, as soon as you come into suffering where you don't like what's happening, you have aversion or grasping after something you do like, you've fallen out of that view. And immediately you qualify for relative path. So most of us will admit that that's us. We fall in and out of it regularly. So we take the absolute view and then we pursue the relative. So recognizing our inherent base happens in successive moments. This is also the relative view, that we don't just have an awakening and we're completely transformed from there on. This is extremely immature, and you see this all over the internet and all the Facebook groups of non-dual groups of practice, Tantra, Vedanta, Dzogchen. Oh, I had my awakenings, especially in the Kundalini crew. Oh, I had my Kundalini awakening. Now I'm forever awakened, you know. It doesn't really work like that. You get awakenings and they happen in successive moments, but they have to be cultivated, stabilized, and we have to expand on this base. When it happens, it has to be expanded on in time and space. The base exists outside of time and space. But our non-comprehension, our non-beingness of the base, which we really are, which, yes, we contrive, we do it on ourselves, that exists in time and space and can be worked with in time and space. It can be worked with in sequence, because that is where we're at, very simply, right? So the relative is necessary, but we have to maintain the absolute view. That's the key teaching on the absolute view. In basic level Tantra, we say it's very important to work where you're at. It's considered one of the 3 hallmarks of authentic tantric practice. Work where you're at. Here's the quote by Jean Klein. Here it is. Jean Klein is a tantric teacher. I think he's into Sri Vidya, but I liked everything I've read by him. And here's one thing, and someone sent me a quote of his. In theory, all is one. In practice, all is hierarchy. So we could say that in theory, everything is this universal experience, the base, and yet in practice, it's all sequential. It's all progressive, building upon, building upon, building upon, and so forth. But here's the key. We don't ever get confused that we're actually creating our base. Don't ever get confused that you're creating your enlightenment, but you are actively engaging with your experience to take away that which is not your enlightenment. And that takes active progressive work, because again, our consciousness is here and we have to work exactly where we're at. To not work where you're at, just think about it for a second. If you're not living this absolute view all the time, and yet that's where you're putting 99% of your effort, in the absolute view, you're just going to sit in the open absolute view. You're going to walk around telling everybody you're Shiva. You're going to change the way you speak and everything, so you don't refer to yourself as a pronoun I. All this kind of stuff that happens, which is actually very strenuous, obviously. To do that is to not work where you're really at. It's to work where you want to be someday. It's to work to where your base really is. But it's also a denial of the expression of manifestation as well, which is also connected to the base, which is also free of its karmic limitations, pure and perfect. So let's work where we're at and not space out and go above where we're actually at. Okay. So another way to understand the relative view and the absolute from this perspective of the relative now is that let's talk about this Kundalini. Let's talk about Kundalini. Let's talk about Shaktipata. I have strong opinions, as you know, about this, of people running Shaktipata classes and workshops and trainings and teaching you to go out and give Shaktipata to other people. Fundamentally, my realization from my practice and the teachings of my masters have showed me that you can't go out and give magic to other people. You can't take that which is unmanipulable, that is completely unable to be held, conceived of even. We can't even conceive of this thing and say that we're going to orchestrate a moment where I'm going to transmit it to you. And you're going to have this moment of recognition of your own nature. It just doesn't happen. It's a fallacy. It's a misunderstanding of what being introduced to your nature actually means. And I used to teach this way. I was taught this way in the Rudy lineage, and I think it has valid merit. But I don't think it's doing what people think. It's not giving you Shaktipata. Shaktipata is direct experience of your nature. It's not the qualified energy. It's not the dualistic or the semi-non-dualistic energy. Shaktipata is the pure Parashakti showing up in your experience. So then why are there 9 levels of Shaktipata experience? Because we still have to receive it and try to recognize to some level. That recognition level is due to our previous attainment and previous births and study and practice we've done in this lifetime, openness in the moment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So much reconditioning in the relative has to happen in the mind for these moments of Shaktipata to actually be self-identification moments, self-recognition moments. So you can't go and receive a magic Shaktipata from people. The most you're going to have is a spiritual experience. That's a transient phenomena, and you're going to misidentify your base for the spiritual experience, as it's called in Tibetan, nyam. And you don't want a nyam passing for true nature identification, which is so often the case, especially when people are obsessed about Kundalini, obsessed about Shaktipata, very much in the Shaktashaiva mode. You don't really see this in the Tibetan mode, which is nice because they don't have this disease of being so obsessed about spiritual experience. Now, there is something, of course, Kundalini is real. I'm not saying it's not real, but our experience of Kundalini is mediated by our own obstacles, by our own inherent self-image formations, right? What do we apply to ourselves? I'm self-aggrandized 1 minute, I feel self-attacked in the next minute, and all the subtle layers that aren't so gross as that are always mediating your ability to recognize your true nature as Ma Kundalini within you, the Parashakti within you, your own true nature of mind. So when Shaktipata occurs, it's a ripe moment in space and time where the doors all open or all the windows line up, we used to say. And you're experiencing your own true nature for that moment. And many people report that the most profound experiences like that don't happen in the presence of their teacher. They happen some other way, reading a text, looking at a sunset, seeing your baby born, whatever, all these examples I give all the time. Could be anything. But Shaktipata then is ranked in 9 levels of experience by the experiencer and based on the experiencer, their experience and the effect in their life. So the absolute comes through in that moment, but we're only able to express or reflect a certain level of that, one of 9 levels in the classic schema of things. So then what do we do? Because we said in absolute teaching that Shiva recognizes Shiva via Shiva, or that it takes Shiva to recognize Shiva. Well, here's what you do. The Shaktipata awakens you to a certain limitation that you had before, and you expand out. And then what you have to do is supplement the Shaktipata. This is what it's said in all the classic scriptures as well as in the oral tradition. So I'm not talking just from oral here. Scriptures will say this too. You have to supplement the Shaktipata with sadhana. So when you're thinking, I just got Shaktipata, it's my Wednesday night class with that teacher, and I just had my eye-to-eye thing, and I feel all groovy, and oh my God, did you see all the things that happened in the room? So amazing. Whoa, I don't need to do much work that week. Then you go back and don't do much work that week. That's not the idea. That's making a huge mistake. Because first of all, it's not Shaktipata anyway. Someone's not sitting up there in pure stage, 10, 11, 12 essence, giving you the experience of 10, 11, 12 to your own essence. And if they did, it would be useless anyway. So, because you're only going to take it where you're at. So the real work to be done is in the relative. That's where we're at, as we said. And that sadhana supplements the Shaktipatas. The word that's used always is supplementing of Shaktipatas, progressive Shaktipatas with sadhana, with spiritual practice. Sadhana means spiritual practice. So we engage in spiritual practice in a sense of forgetting about how long it's going to take to get there, just by diving into it each moment that we do it, whether it's integration all day long or whether it's a seated practice. And we are at that point building a deeper sense of surrender, developing the skills of surrendering by identifying with aspects of absolute nature that are arising as the tools of the tradition, the mantras, the awarenesses, the meditations, the icons, whatever you're doing, yoga. Okay? So in this way, we are reconditioning our energy field. We are reconditioning our mind. We are reconditioning everything about us so that we're less obstructed and that we're going to be able to recognize our true nature when that moment comes on an equal level. The mirror of your true nature, reflective mirror, meets the mirror reflection of your own sentient nature, and they get in front of each other in perfect geometry so that they reflect each other into infinity, into the absolute, with no obscuration whatsoever. And this is only accomplished through the relative. So, I've had interesting comments on our system, which is not my system at all. I find that quite interesting. But we've had interesting comments, and I've received these comments from people directly saying things like, "Oh, this system is too athletic. This system is too work-oriented, too much effort." And I keep thinking, what are these people thinking? That just realization happens by magic? If it happened by magic, everybody would have this realization. But it's the fault of the modern translators, I think. It's really the fault of modern translators who are pumping out Dzogchen books every day, pumping out Shakti Shaiva translations of non-dual Shaivism, of Abhinavagupta strain every day, just pumping them out, articles, workshops, books, telling you that you are your essential nature already and there's nothing you need to do. That's the absolute view, and it's absolutely correct. But when you think there's nothing else to do, but you're still suffering, think there's nothing else to do and you're still emotionally reactive, think there's nothing else to do and you're still self-grasping, and you're not okay with that, that means you're on the path. And a path is a road. And it has past, present, and future. And that's real in the relative view. And you have to work progressively through that. When you find yourself no longer in those parameters of personal suffering, of reactivity, of taking things personal, forming a self with grasping really strongly, egoic pride or taking it personal, whatever it is, either way, grasping or aversion. Okay, you're going to qualify for direct realization at that point. But what's fascinating is that the real yogic tradition of direct realization, I mentioned this, I think, in the first part of the absolute teachings, and now it's relevant again in here, understanding Shaktipata and Sadhana, is that the absolute place, when you're sitting in absolute recognition, it doesn't mean you sit like a statue still for the rest of your life, right? If you want to continue in the path. If you don't want to continue, it's fine. But those people who are going to continue into stages 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, do so actively. You will see, if you're observing them, you will see that they do sadhanas. You will see that they are involved in very detailed sadhanas. But is it their own personal structure of their ego, of their ahankara, their self-image maker, driving that? No. It's now a fulfillment of what is natural. It's now a fulfillment of what feels like it has to be done, the same way they breathe and are alive and have a pulse. That's it. But yet you're going to see these practices, and the practices into stage 11, I mean, they're very strong. You're sitting for days, hours. You're in retreat, sometimes completely in retreat, sometimes in a sealed retreat, no food, no water, no coming out. So that's stage 11 classically. And then 12, even more, but when you're doing the practices that are leading up to it in stage 8, 9, 10, these are practices where you're cultivating light, right? And there used to be a lot in Shaivist tradition, but they're kind of gone now. They're preserved very well, though. In certain Eastern Christian traditions, if you can get into the deeper part of that, they have certain light bodies they produce. And in the Eastern Christian, I was in Eastern Christian tradition, but this also in the Central Asian origin, non-dual yoga meditation traditions that Trikamasa Yoga represents. We have this technology, this understanding as well. So back to the Shaktipata sadhana theory, we have to have harmony between understanding that when essence shows up to us, that's a Shaktipata. Now, as you get more and more experienced in your path and less excited by every little thing that happens to you and journaling every little thing, telling your friends about it and running on the internet about every little experience that you had spiritually, then you actually get more comfortable with the absolute showing up, and it becomes more and more a daily road that you walk on. And at that point, there's a great harmony that occurs between the relative and the absolute, a great harmony that's occurring between the Kundalini and the Sadhana to supplement the Shaktipada awakenings of the Kundalini, because you're starting to realize that the Kundalini is doing the Sadhana that is supplementing the realizing of the Kundalini, because you're walking at this place of Shiva, recognizing Shiva via Shiva, right? Hopefully that makes sense to you. In the 9 classic levels of Shaktipata, you see that the 9th level, you die. You just drop your body immediately. There's such a deep identity with essence that you just drop. And what's interesting is they'll say drop, and there's no real text that says you physically die. That 9th level could be easily interpreted as stage 11 and 12, 9th level Shaktipata. You drop the attachment to the body, and therefore you realize its true nature. And the 5 lights of creation radiate out in all directions. A rainbow body appears, right? Because somebody's asked me in the past, well, these Shaktipatas up to stage 9, where you become Shiva directly, they don't talk about a light body. They say you just drop your body, you just die. And that's because the interpreters of that system from that time till now, since they lost the rainbow body tradition in Shaivism, they don't know what to say except you just die, which is true too. That can happen. The great Dzogchen masters, they have the rainbow body tradition in Dzogchen still. They can also just die, just fall over, the death of the dog, in fact, it's called, because they don't even do any preparation. They don't sit down again in Padmasa. They don't eject their consciousness. They don't bring them to heart. The very, very high level Dzogchen practitioners will die by just falling over completely in the state in that moment with no preparation, no goodbye, no care, because they're so in the absolute. Stage 9 of the Kundalini stages, right? Or the rainbow body, the highest level, right? Both ways. Okay. So the summation points about the absolute, about the relative, or about the whole thing, basically. Yeah, so basically that's the deal on the relatives, that we have to recondition our mind and our mind stream to actually have the recognition of our true nature. Now, people find this really strange. They say, but if your mind is a subset of your true nature and unable to encompass the whole thing, how does this work? How could you be reconditioning something which is so small that has to apprehend or comprehend this huge thing? You know, using this kind of idea of size to relate to example. And there's a beautiful example in Kashmir from it, where they would say that a woman is betrothed to a man by the village astrologer. She's never met the man, but he's described to her, his chart is described to her, and his qualities are described to her, and she's already thinking how amazing this marriage is going to be. Same is being done for the man. And then, but they've never met, right? Old style. They're going to meet on the day of the wedding. Whoa. So none of us would go for that today, right? So the woman's in the market. Let's take the woman's perspective. She's in the market and she's going with her aunties and mom and grandma and picking out all the things for the wedding. It's coming up in a few days. And she's heard all these stories about the husband-to-be from his family, from his friends and her parents who've met him already and all this. Oh, he's a wonderful, you know. So she's formed you can say a view teaching. She's formed a cognition of what this person is. And it's very clear, it's very precise, right? But she hasn't actually met him. And then when she's in the marketplace, she becomes aware of a young man who seems to physically fit the description, who seems to be dealing with the vendors in a beautiful, compassionate way, true to the description, with wonderful speaking because he's highly educated, with great manners. And she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She's having this revelation. And then he turns and sees her and he's having the same revelation. And then, boom, they realize that these are the people that are going to get married. This is my future spouse. In that moment, there's a total recognition where the idea meets the reality, right? So this is how it works with Shaktipata, you recognizing your true nature and supplementing with daily sadhana on a relative level. it will come to a point where your mind is so sufficiently trained in recognizing your nature and sufficiently purified from those things which made an obstacle towards you relaxing and identifying your nature, because your nature has to identify your nature, right? So we train the mind enough to relax back into its nature in that moment, boom, boom. And then you see the beloved in the marketplace, and you become one with them in that moment. This is how it really works. This is the relative. So not much more than that, because if we were going to talk more about the relative way, there are so many thousands of techniques within all the different paths of the non-dual yoga and meditation traditions of the Mahasiddhas that it would just take too many days to actually go through them all. Understanding why we do the relative, how it fits with the absolute is the most important, which is what we're covered here. Let's look at the summation points then. Remain in absolute view. This is the key. Not psychotically in absolute view, which means the way you see it for people who are spaced out, walking around, not talking with the word I to describe themselves, very, hippy dippy, new agey, lovey lighty, and it's going to get you in trouble because it's not that real. When we say remain in view, remain in the clear knowledge of the view that at base, you are that view. That's all. Don't make anything special out of it. If you can just hold that as second attention alone, that's amazing. You don't need to do anything about it. You don't need to go and declare your love for all beings every moment and your oneness with everything and act all spaced out and superior and then step in front of a bus and get smashed like a bug because the bus is still real and you're still relatively real as well. So just remain in absolute view. That's the key. Relax rigid perceptions. So how to remain in absolute view? I remind myself of the teaching that I received, that you received right in these 2 sessions. This is introduction to your nature. You're receiving this introduction, you're understanding it. Remind yourself of it over and over again. And to do that, I have to relax my rigid perception. So when I'm reminding myself of this teaching, I'm the base. Base has no contraction. So rigid perceptions can be relaxed. Perceptions of myself, perceptions of other, perceptions of a situation. I can relax them each moment. And I can relax the projected fields because we actually project as well. We project our conditioning outward and create 6-realm formations all the time that we're not relaxing into our natural presence. So remain in absolute view, relax rigid perceptions and projections, recognize everything in your field as the arising of the energy of the base. Recognize everything in this field as the arising of the energy of the base, okay? And that's what really the reconditioning of the Trikamasiddha Yoga Foundation practice is all about. It's up in the documents, I think it's called, files, on Facebook for now. When we get the website up, it'll be up there too. You can download the PDF, print it out, and practice. And when you're doing these prayers, you're constantly reorienting towards the base from every angle possible. That's what that's all about. And you're creating a deep groove that your mind goes to those prayers. The more you do those prayers, the more your mind goes there rather than the latest hip hop song about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll and drama. And that's really what you want to do if you're a practitioner. You don't want to program yourself so strongly with other types of entertainment and other things like this because they go in quite deep. And they do show up, actually. So you want to recognize all the natural arising of energy of the base. Everything is that. So you keep the view and this too is the base. And that's actually what makes it workable. So then another thing is to work in each moment with what arises as transient, insubstantial phenomena. So it makes everything workable and loose. You don't have to grab onto a tight position. See everything that arises, experience everything that arises. Remind yourself that it's clear light manifesting as something in this relative world. Just like when you're in a dream, you're sure that the elephant you're riding is real. There's no elephant in the dream. There's no dream body. There's no dream you. It's not even anything. It's just transient. In the same way, whatever you're working with, be clear with it as a relative entity, that you're reacting and interacting with it as a relative entity. And we have to be grounded in that way. But we do want to understand it at its nature, that neither you nor it are substantial, actually, and everything's transient phenomena. It's the clear light arising and manifesting as form in this realm of form. So do engage. Just don't make it concrete, right? Okay, another summation point is Apanavayu, which is the downward moving force of the human body, and inertia or tamas, they're our default programming. So going back into idleness, going back into restriction, what is that called? Going back into resistance, going back into resistance. This is our default programming, because the energy that moves down, that keeps us grounded into the earth until it's purified, it also creates tons of resistances, boundaries that keep everything out, that kind of idea. So that's our default programming. That's a condition of human birth. That's just the way it is. So we have to find balance. And to find that balance, we have to work out our robotic conditioning. So much of our conditioning has the quality of holding us in a small package. In fact, all of it does. So all of it involves the incorrect movement or incorrect quality of the apanavayu, the earth element, and this quality of tamas, or inertia, or creating separateness, right, through contraction. So we want to, again, find that balance by working our way out of our robotic conditioning. And there's, again, all of the practices that we do are ways to recognize over and over again when we're in that robotic conditioning. But soon we want to move from this constant recognizing how I'm deficient, how I'm stuck, and relax and have a little more time spent in what is my real nature? What is my real nature? What is the view? And don't try to experience it directly too much, because when you try to bring on the experience of the absolute, it's not the absolute. This is the key mistake being made today in the neo-philosophical, scholastic, Shaivist, and Dzogchen thing happening in the world right now. People are learning the view, and then they're trying to not invoke and relax all the things that prevent it. They're trying to create it. They're not trying to relax all the things that prevent you from relaxing into yourself as a base. They're trying to create it all the time. And then they're misunderstanding relaxation of everything, thinking they don't need to put any effort into life. Very, very wrong idea. Very, very diluted. Okay. So this conditioning of the tension of the element of earth and the apanavayu, et cetera, also applies to, it's also, I should say, supramental conditioning. So the idea that you think you can put your mind into something and relax it, become the base through that effort, it's also not true. You have to just relax that idea too. Because the conditions that hold us in this pattern of experiencing ourselves as a separate individual exist above the level of the ahankara, above the level of the physical body, above the level of the emotions, above the level of the mind. It exists at a level above that where we individuate from this one consciousness for whatever reason we did it gazillion, quadrillion, jillion kalpas ago, and we still do it in reincarnation terms. But it exists above that. And so to get above that, you can't use your mind, but you have to use your mind to make a platform to then relax and allow it to open again. Okay? So let's see. So you can't really merely just decide to be your base. That would be effort. It doesn't work like that. But you can decide to do the relative work to be able to recognize the base when it shows up, to do the relative work to stop resisting and stop grasping so that it can show up, because it won't show up while you're doing all those things. Who you are won't show up. Okay. And I'm going to go through now. Matthew Jones had asked for, what about the view, method, and fruit of each of these? And I think this really is a nice thing to go through as a summary point. So I'm going to go through that right now for you. You might want to write it out on a little piece of paper or something as we go through it so you can see it. In the absolute, the view is you are base, fully expressing. The view of the absolute is you are the base already, fully expressing. The method is, or the practices you use to live out this orientation or this truth, called the view, is that there's nothing to do or not do. There's absolutely, absolutely nothing to do or not do, spiritually speaking, in order for this base to express itself. And then the fruit is that you are always in the fruit as the fruit. Therefore, your conduct, natural conduct every moment, is the base, it is the view, it is the fruit all at once. This is the absolute view, method, and fruit, right? Now, that means there's no increase, there's no development possible, and it's unnecessary. Let's contrast this with the relative view, method, and fruit. Okay, we have to keep the base one and understand it, but we got to live more in the relative where we are until we're not. Relative view. You are base concealed. You are the potential base expressing. Right now, base is concealed because you're not experiencing yourself as the base. That's a pragmatic understanding of the base as pure potentials rather than what is expressing at this moment, every moment in an unbroken fashion. Because remember, realization is not just having experiences of the base. As soon as you have an experience of the base, your mind absolutely comes in and turns it into something it wasn't. So every Shaktipata you've ever had is never what it was. You have to know that. Every Shaktipata you ever had is never what it was. Your mind will always come in and change it. And that makes it unworkable. And that's what makes it so dangerous even to show up constantly for Shaktipata workshops and classes and stuff where you're supposed to be getting it. A, I don't think it happens, so it's total delusion. And then B, your mind is immediately forming ideas about what it was. And why would you have to go every single week for this thing over and over again if it really is Shaktipata, right? So let's not think about it this way. So the view of the relative is that you are the base concealed. You are the potential. The method or the means to have the experience of this view expressed that you're the potential and then have it realized is that all methods come from the base. The methods recondition my mind, recondition my perceptions, my senses, and my conduct. The more I dive into it, the more it reconditions me, the more I'm aligning more with the base's natural expression in the world. So that eventually, when purified, quote unquote, I can recognize the base as who I am. That's the method of the relative. Then the fruit is each relative sadhana or method has a desired outcome, is the thing. Each method has a desired outcome. Some have 3 possible outcomes based on your aptitude. Are you a low-level practitioner, middling, or superior, they call it often. Inferior, middling, or superior. But all of the relative fruits contribute to creating the environment which makes self-recognition or understanding of yourself as the base in an experiential way possible. So that's what the fruit is on the relative, is that the fruit is I'll recognize my nature through developing a deeper understanding of my nature and through dissolving those things that stand between myself and my nature to letting its potential express. And, you know, all the relative fruits contributing to that environment, which makes your recognition possible, is really the fusion of absolute and relative view, the fusion. Because in absolute view, you say, I am that, I'm just relaxing. But relaxing means I have to do something. And I accept that with joy, with no resistance. It's part of being alive. And then that creates this beautiful fusion of absolute and relative. And then, like, in the way I see it, really, there shouldn't be this big conflict between absolute and relative. I think that's a big problem. People get into debates about it. I mean, I'm really looking at this one. I just check in every few days and just see what's going on in this one view, one Facebook group that talks about absolute view of Vedanta, Shaivism, and so on, the Indian traditions mostly. And man, it's just like one post after the next about the theory that you don't need to do anything because it's all realized already, using very technical Sanskrit terminology to back it all up. And I think, man, people sit around writing this stuff all day long to send this stuff all day long in there saying the exact same thing as each other when they could be doing sadhana. Quite interesting. Anyway, to each their own. Another summation point is second attention. Don't lose second attention. Don't lose present moment awareness and an emotional reaction in grabbing onto some kind of thinking about yourself or about a situation, emotional reacting about yourself, about a situation. It's an essential relative practice to stay in second attention. If you don't know what that is, you'll see it on the courses coming up on the website, many ways to practice it, but basically it's the idea of maintaining a secondary awareness while your primary awareness is driving the car, changing the diapers, writing your book, doing whatever you're doing, working your job, whatever it is. But without second attention, there's no development. because there's simply no pause to allow for present moment awareness. And this has to be cultivated. And it's hard. I'm not going to bullshit you. It's hard. You've got to do it. You got to do the hard work because it pays off. People would rather say, oh, I just relax, man. I just rather stay in my awareness by relaxing, but the truth is, because they don't have deep awareness training, their awareness is scattered. It's grasping a zillion things a second, which creates kind of a homogenized experience that it's all one and that there's no grasping, but actually it's going really quickly. That's why in classical mind training, in the way of meditation, the first phase of the whole practice and second part of the second phase, first half of the second phase, is to learn to slow the mind so you can actually catch all this stuff before it happens. That means keeping second attention the whole time as much as you can. Okay. So another point is consistent generation. When you work in the relative view and you're working on practices that have a trajectory, start in A and they finish in Z or M or wherever, but for that path, for that miniature practice set, it has a certain amount of stages it has to go through with signs and energies that have to build up and flower into the next level and flower into the next level and so on. So basically consistent generation becomes the key. If you're falling off all the time and breaking your practice routine, you're never going to develop that consistent energy. So push and glide is recommended, but within the cycle of consistency. Work hard, relax, but stay in the awareness, stay in the fruit of what you worked with. Work hard, relax, work hard, relax. This is very important within the absolute view and the relative infusion. So keep consistency in generation practice. Too often, I think one of the main things today is that people get a practice, they work it like crazy for a short time, and then they stop. They want a new practice. There's a fascination with new practices. Never really have taken that whole process from the 1 point all the way around to the 9 point. Every spiritual process has to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the Enneagram of 9 points. This is not the Enneagram of personality. This is the Enneagram of process, which we go into in Enneagram trainings through Trikomasada Yoga. Everything you go through has to go through this octave to be complete. So when you start a practice, if you don't consistently stay generating the energy, it's going to stop at 1, 2, or 3. 3, you're putting in a lot of efforts. A lot of people get to the 3 and make a lifetime out of the 3. They get stuck, never get to the 9. Others get to 4, 5, 6, take the surrender point at 6, and then they never do anything as well, because the little bit of minor accomplishment they're having with it through 6 of relaxing, oh, this must be it. This must be the whole fruit of the practice. I'm there. And they miss it again. They don't realize you have to go 7, 8, 9 for completion. And guess what? 1 comes right again. You start again. So if you're doing generation practice, if you're working in the relative, make sure that you stay consistent and finish your cycles. And you finished your cycle by dialoguing with your teacher and knowing that you have the signs that are supposed to be there, inner and outer signs that are supposed to be there. The ultimate sadhana advice is, can you integrate all activities of body, speech, and mind with whatever experience and knowledge of the base that you have? That's the ultimate absolute sadhana advice. Can you integrate everything that's happening in your body, speech, and mind with whatever experience energy, or knowledge of the base that you have so far? And if you can't integrate it all in that way, then it's really you're not a candidate for absolute practice yet, or taking the absolute view and getting rid of the relative. So you can't blow off your partner when they go to argue with you. You got to deal with it. Maybe there's something in there for you. Surprise, surprise. You can't take positions. A horrible thing happened one time when one student had struck his wife and hurt her, injured her quite badly. And I said, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And this guy was so far out in the absolute view, but not living there at all, just spaced out from getting too many view teachings, not enough grounding. He said, oh, I didn't do it. My hand just went like that and punched her in the face. And it was all the non-dual. It was Shiva punching Shiva, being punched by Shiva, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, this person's seriously deluded. So we don't want to go there. That's not what I mean by the last thing I said, okay? So fuse the relative to the absolute. Let nothing hold you back. And let's go into these question and answer moment here. May ploy. Thanks for the talk. Let's say a practitioner hits a wall in their sadhana, their practice, where they're holding back due to fear. What is the key to overcoming fear, trusting and surrendering on the path. Well, you'd want to ask yourself, what am I afraid of, May? When this happens, you want to say, what am I afraid of? Fundamentally, we're afraid of getting realized, which is kind of oxymoronic, right? And it's very strange because it's just counterintuitive, because you're in this path, you're throwing yourself into it, everything you've got. You get right up to the edge where there's going to be some kind of breakthrough or movement, and we get afraid. That fear simply points out just how strong the attachment is to your self-image and all that goes into creating that self-image. Just how strong the attachment is to your navamala, being separate, we call it navamala. That's what that fear is about. It's not a fear of, I'm not going to be able to be good enough, I'm not going to be able to do it, I'm not going to be able to live the enlightened life and contribute enough to beings. We tell ourselves stories like that sometimes. Oh, I've got a fear of success, or I've got a fear of, no, baloney. It's going to be straight with you. It's a fear, because everyone has it. We all have this. All my masters had it. I discussed it with all of them. Yeah, we get terrified when we get to the point where we're going to have true realization, because it means the end of everything the ego structure thought was fun, thought was entertaining. I mean, it's like a fast forward to the death moment, right? It's a full-on claustrophobia of death is here. Holy crap, I'm here right now. So I'm 58-ish. I just turned it a day ago. And in this 59th year, looking into the future, it's like it could be over really quick, relatively speaking. It could be over in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But no matter how long it is, it's going to seem quick when you get there, because it is pretty quick. It's only a few decades for most of us. It's not really that big. Well, when you get deep in your sadhana and make a real commitment and really push. I used to experience this when I went on retreat a lot. I'd push and push and push and push, and boom, the breakthrough would come where there was confrontation with the nature of your obstacle, the nature of the self-clinging, the ultimate confrontation. And I'd fall back from it. Oh, I can't make it. Oh, I can't make it. And I'd have all these excuses, and I knew the teachings, and I would hear myself making up excuses and so forth. I have to take the view again, the absolute view. This is the inevitability. And death is the inevitability that's going to show me the absolute. I better get with it now before I die. Because if I'm scared of it now, imagine what happens if I don't realize it before I die and I'm not very realized as a being, right? Face it now, relax. And then all that fear would be there. But constantly I would notice that it was the attachment. Attachment to what I thought of myself, what I thought of others, judgments, attachments to comforts and pleasures, and attachment to what I'm used to, familiar with, attachment to what will seem hard, to let go of friends that I haven't worked out issues with yet, that I never will work out issues with, friends that became enemies, letting go of things that I didn't complete in life that I'm never going to get to complete. I had many ideas I would complete many projects. They're not going to get completed. Letting go of all those things is facing it. It's becoming real. It's becoming sober. That's where that fear comes from. Thanks. So Sukalia just reminded me, we just watched for the umpteenth time the movie called The Fountain. And every time I've watched The Fountain through my spiritual life, it has ripped me into that place of attachment. If you can understand what all the symbology means, the symbolism of it means, it can show you your attachments like almost no other visual experience I've ever experienced can do. And we just watched it the other night, and there it was again. There it is, putting you right into that moment of death, and all of the clinging you have that was acting as excuses for why you don't want to face that. And all those fears are right there. Beautiful movie, The Fountain, with Hugh Jackman. And I forget her name, Hugh Jackman, but it's a very good movie. Okay, great question, May. Good luck with that one. You can overcome. It's only your nature after all. And the next one. Zainab, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Zainab Rizvi. Oh no, that's just okay. Jorge, that's an emoji. Thank you for that. Jorge has here, I had initiation with Swami Niranjan. I'm imagining you're saying Niranjan Saraswati, my junior guru as well, a few decades ago, and certainly fell off the practice. Unconscious behavior, drugs, lots of confusion, and energy loss, or dross maybe. Lower energy, right? How can I restore myself back in the path? Okay. Let me read your second part just in case it's relevant. I download the amazing foundations and have been putting them into practice and have a bit of a doubt. Could you please explain Gayatri chanting technically? How should we practice? Okay. So the first part, Great that you had initiation with a real lineage. That's fantastic. And then you fell off. That happens. And you basically have to brush yourself off, have regret, have remorse, fix things that can be fixed with people that you mess things up with, let go of the things that you can't fix or the people that don't want to deal with you anymore, because that will happen, and move on. You just got to go deep and just recommit. There's nothing else to it but recommit. Big fall or small fall, you just recommit. And I think what you do is, especially if you're doing the foundation practice, as you said now, you just keep reading the foundation and getting reinitiated every day into your own commitment to the path. Because when we feel disconnected from the great tradition of the masters and the deities, it is true, we can feel that disconnection. We really, truly can have a feeling of that disconnection. But it's never them. It's always us. It's us knowing that we have transgressed against our own value system. That's guilt. We should have guilt. It's very important in the growth cycle. When we make falls, we should assess what we've done, have guilt about it, feel that, have remorse, want to try to fix whatever we can, let go of the things we can't, and then forgive yourself, because the Mahasiddhas already do. The enlightened deities already do. I'm worried about the narcissistic 7 on the Enneagram type, or anybody who has a narcissistic complex, who constantly does things that are terrible, constantly falling off, but doesn't feel the regret, doesn't feel the damage to others and themselves, doesn't feel the remorse, doesn't do a confession of any kind, try to make any reparations, and just continues. Oh, it's just all okay in the base. Everything is all one. That's okay, I did that. I'll do better next time. Poof. That's a little too quick and not really getting the point of it. So it's okay that you, basically, in a nutshell, Jorge, it's okay you fell. You just get right back in the saddle and go. And you don't think, oh, but I'm getting older and I wasted all those years. Useless thought, useless energy drain. Just another way the ahankara or the ego structure can figure out to hold you back. Don't give it a second's thought. Don't even think about it. Go right back into your practice and get right with the lineage again, right? Through the practices and prayer. Confession, and becoming contrite and so forth. So the foundation's amazing. Thank you. And I think it is amazing. It's not because it came out of my creativity. It truly was a transmission. I sat down and wrote it out in one go, and it was like, whoa. I'm glad you're putting it into practice. The Gayatri chanting, technically, I wouldn't get too worried about the technicalities on mantra chanting, because it's about creating the bhava. And yes, it's good to do Sanskrit correctly and not really like mash it up, but you don't have to worry about it too much. More really feel the bhava and connect with it, right? And when we get to inner teachings, when you come to a training, you get inner teachings about it, then you'll see how to do that in a deeper way. But basically, when you chant it, it's Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhyoyo Naha Prachodayat. That's the sing-song melodic version, right? It can be done over and over like that. And I think that's a good way to do it in the outer level of practice, because it develops a real strong, loving bhava in the heart. Because the Gayatri is really meant to really open up the spiritual heart and the emotional heart both, and bring on all that deeper awakening of energy. It's supposed to awaken the sun within you. Okay. So I think that melody and meter is quite beautiful and quite easy. And when you do the purifications through the chakras, so Om Puhu, Om Bhuvaha, Ogum Suvaha, Om Mahaha, Om Janaha, Ogum Satyam, Om Tatsavitur Varenyam, Bhargodevasya Dhimahi, Dhyoyo Prachodayate, Om Bhapo Jyotir Usomtam Brahma Bhurvusuram. That's the version that you do when you do the purification of the chakras, of 21 lokas. Chakras are also realms, 21 realms or 21 lokas. That's generating power. But when you go to do the Gayatri for your own opening and your own transformation, and do 100,000 repetitions of it, which is what's recommended in the tradition, and you can do it with your prostrations. We use the Mahamrityunjaya for that, but if you're really keen, you can also do it with the Gayatri, do your prostrations with it. Then use that first melody I gave you, because it's more uplifting, it's more opening. Try it anyway. You can use whatever you want, but try it. Okay. Ah, Kendra, the great white north, all the snow and the poetry in the snow. The prayer of the energy body, Foundations Manual. Early on, there is a line that reads, "Bless me to accumulate the energy necessary to birth an energy body." In the TMY view, do we not have an energy body until a certain level of practice is met? Or is this pointing to strengthening the visualization of the energy body? Very good point. In the absolute and the relative, this is a very important thing to understand. We have the potentiality for an energy body. Okay. I have the potentiality because I have a nervous system to learn Kung Fu, some very complicated physical practice like Kung Fu, which can be highly technical. But just having the nervous system doesn't mean I can practice Kung Fu. Doesn't mean I know it already in my body. Doesn't mean I can bring it out when it's needed spontaneously, right? So I have to learn the techniques and do them over and over, thousands, millions of repetitions, even consciously focusing body, speech, and mind until it awakens this experience. And actually the word Gong Fu in Chinese means like ability. You can say to a chef, does that chef have Gong Fu? You know, you have Gong Fu. And then do you have good chef ability? Same. So a Kung Fu player, someone who's a great Kung Fu fighter, do you have Gong Fu? Means do you have the spirit of this thing? Have you really put in the time where it now becomes you? And from a practical side of point of view, we would say that's an energy body phenomena. Yes, it involves your nervous system, but it's also the energy body phenomenon. So when you pray in the foundation practice, the energy body, prayer of the energy body, this line, "Bless me to accumulate the energy necessary to birth an energy body." What happens here is that, yes, the energy body is there potentially, but there is a birth moment where it gets birthed. So a lot of effort is put in, and then eventually there's just one birth moment, boom, it happens. And you now have a functional, sensational, or sensable energy body. But it's like a little baby. And little babies have to be cared for. Very much this was described to me by my Taoist teachers, that you have to then take care of that little baby for 7 years until it's self-maintaining. So when you birth an energy body, when you pray for an energy body, you're praying for it to birth. And that's from consistency of practice that we talked about earlier in the relative teachings today. And then once it's birthed, you have to not fall off, not backslide. You know, you got to watch the baby. You got to feed it regularly. You got to burp it. You got to change the diaper. You got to take care of it so it develops in a beautiful way. And then it gets to the point where it's able to take care of itself. Then it matures. Then it can actually produce more of itself. So this is all becoming a mature energy body. So yes, it's potentially there, but no, it'll never be there in its fullness until you actually work with that energy body. And that's all the practices we do of Hatha Yoga, Kundalini Hatha Yoga, which includes asana, pranayama, mudra, bandha, kriya yoga, mantra, all the really deep stuff that we do. The deity yoga is everything to really develop and accumulate these energies. Okay. Mary, Mayplay, that's exactly what the fear is of. Okay, great. So you nailed it. Good for you. Hope you get to work that one out. And you love that movie. That's great. That's good. We do too. I think it's awesome. There are some movies that are just so great. The Matrix 1 is fantastic on the View teachings. It's completely congruent with what we teach in Masada Yoga. Those boys definitely knew their non-dual yoga and meditation who wrote that movie. Wachowski brothers, I think. And this one, so that's great for View, and Fountain is great for attachment and seeing it and getting really clear on that confrontation with your attachments and fear of death so you can open into your essence. Really wonderful. Let's see. Nelson. Hi, Nelson. Greetings. Is there another specific mudra that goes along with Shantipanta mudras besides Anjali? Yes, I think you probably know, Nelson. You're probably baiting me on this question. Yes, you know there are other mudras, and they get demonstrated when, Sukalia? In the foundations course. In the foundations course, that'll be up on the website. I'll go into detail on those mudras, on how to make them and do them. I'm not trying to sell the course right now, but there are a lot of mudras in the Shantipata, and to go through them right now would be a bit difficult to explain them all and their meaning and so forth in the prayer and why it works energetically in the body. So I love your question. Yes, there are other mudras. Now, if you're near Anuloma, Guruseva, Kuleshwari, Sukhasiddhi, all the students that have been with me a long time down in Brazil, I'm sure they can give you a pretty 90 to 99% close class on them. I do watch them do the mudras now and then, the Shantipanta. I was eavesdropping on someone's video class the other day that they were teaching. The mudras need a little bit of work, but overall they're close enough. There's also a manual with photos in them that they might have. They might want to lend you the yoga manual from the ancient times that I made, where a series of photos was made for each of the mudras, and you can learn how to do them. Okay, there you go. Nelson, Durgamurti, can you explain again? What'd you say?
I was just saying, I think Durgamurti is actively teaching in her yoga class.
Yeah, Durgamurti is another one who's also able to help you with these, I think. So try anybody of those names and see what you can figure out. And I'll fix them for you if you need it when I get to you, or when you take foundation course, you can fix it for yourself. Or when I get to Brazil, I think I'll see you before all that, maybe. If you can get your situation sorted out, we can all get our worldwide pandemic situation sorted out. I'll be on a plane to Brazil real quick. All right, Durgamurti, Natalie Caldas, can you explain again about the Enneagram process of practice, please? Maybe give a practical example. How do we know we've reached 9 in a practice sadhana? Okay, this is a big topic. It should be its own class. I'll talk about it briefly. You will not be satisfied. Okay, but let's try. The one point of the Enneagram process is the initiation when anything begins. And that usually begins with the idea. So anybody who's had the idea that they want to do, let's say, deity yoga. Okay, when you come to Kundalini Hatha Yoga or Way of Water, we initiate you into certain deity yoga practices. Okay, now, so right away you say, oh, you read in the ad for Trikamasa Yoga on the website, Kundalini Hatha Yoga, and you get initiation into Parashiva, Shambhanath Shiva, Durga, Mahaprana Shakti. Wow, all these deity practices, Hanuman Sadhana, blah, 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 through the path. I'm going. That's this first point of the Enneagram process. And then you collect all the necessary materials that need to come together to actually make it happen. So you do whatever you need to do to get to the training, and you receive the Abhishekam. That's one of the materials, the empowerment of the deity, and the proper instructions, blah, blah, blah. Then the third part is you go to work on getting the deity practice going. Step 3 of this 9-step Enneagram process. And you really work it, you really work it, you really work it, you really work it. And at that point, you're coming up to all the obstacles that come up when you apply yourself really hard towards a result. Very simple. Should I take these off? So that's a third point. That's the effort point, right? And then to make it real simple, to skip over a few, you get to the 6th point, because the 3 and 6 point are the keys here. This will help you understand the signs of whether you made it or not. If you take the 3 point to its absolute conclusion, it'll yield the 4 point and the 5 point and the 6 point. And at the 6 point, the only truth that will be real for you at that moment, which lines up perfectly with the 12-stage view, is at the 6th stage of 12-stage view and the 6th point of Enneagram process, you have to let go. You have to surrender that the work you've done so far, what you've put together, is relevant, is really giving you, is really all you could do, the best you could do. If not, you go back. You go back to 2, you collect experience again, you collect energy, you collect content, materials, you work through 3 again, because you can get to 6 and realize, I'm surrendering when nothing's happening. Or I don't feel complete in my surrender because I feel like something in me is saying I didn't really give it enough effort. Or I'm surrendering and nothing's happening. It's not really surrender. I'm like pulled out of it too quickly. That means retrace your steps. Go back to step 2 and go again. Or if you faltered on 4 or 5, you go again. But I want to describe it all now. It's too much. So then you go through 7 and you surrender, and a whole new world dawns, as it does in this 12-stage view of 7, 8, 9, 10. And basically in the next stages of the deity practice, it becomes easier to feel that the deity and you are from the same base, and that you have an intrinsic relationship to the deity, even in time and space, because of the karma of being in the lineage. These are all the internal signs, right? And it becomes more easy to feel that you are the deity or that you're receiving the blessings of the deity. It becomes easier on the outer level to visualize the deity. They stay more crystal in your visualization. Their mantra stands as a standing wave of vibrational power in the presence of the deity's energy body instead of just a mantra, which all of this you learn in the deity yoga practices, especially in way of water. So that's starting to happen. And you realize, okay, I've got this. This is happening. And now it's coming to fruition. So you could say in deity yoga, in Enneagram of process terms, in stages 1 and 2, you're developing the relationship with the deity as master and you are servant. And then in 3, you're developing the relationship of yourself with the deity where they're your teacher, they're your tutor, getting closer and closer to that energy. In 4 and 5, you're developing and verging on that edge of where you're becoming one with the deity, and you're doing now sexualized visualization of sexualized practice with the deity to show your oneness as the partner, co-equal partner in this practice. And then after point number 6 of Enneagram process, going towards 9, 7, 8, 9 brings you to the journey of becoming the deity itself. And that's stage 8, step 8 on the Enneagram. And then 9 would be the deity then yields essence directly, absolute nature. Even if you still act like the deity, talk like the deity, love the deity, do deity's practice, you're now even beyond the deity. The deity is still a doorway, of course, into your own essence. That's a simple way to look at it. You can plot that same Enneagram process for all sadhanas, and we can do that in detail in person, maybe a class or a workshop online or something in the future. Thanks for that. And I think that's it. Nobody else had any more questions. Is that right? Okay. Well, that was a wonderful short class, and hopefully that gives us a deeper appreciation for why the relative is necessary in the spiritual path and why we have to hold the absolute view while we work in the relative, and how there should be a fusion of both without conflict. How to avoid the spaced out spiritual bypassing of the God realm by only adhering to the absolute view before it's really our time. And then understanding also how to give yourself a break by push and glide. Don't turn the relative into the labor of the salt mine or the coal mine where you're just grinding, where you think the pure grinding effort is going to give you realization, because it won't either. Push and glide, push and glide. Embrace the grind, but surrender to it at the same time. It's push and glide. You're very welcome, those of you who stayed on, and all the best till we see you again. Let's do the outtake with the Shantipat mantras and dedicate the merit of the class. So wherever you are in time and space, chant Shantipata along with me in Sanskrit and see all beings in all dimensions benefiting from the realization of everybody who just took this class and the beautiful flow of blessing power into this dimension from the parampara, the lineage of the realized masters, through connecting through the class. And let all beings experience the benefit of this. All beings be released from confused suffering into their essence of wisdom and compassion. See all beings seated around you in an infinite plane around you, all being transformed into realized beings, completely enlightened as you're chanting. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya sarvesham swastir bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Loka Samasta No Bhavantu Om Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Varadhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamrita Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Blessings of love and gratitude, long life to our gurus, our masters. May they continue to benefit beings in all times and spaces. May we all be guided and protected on the path and take it to full fruition for the benefit of all. Tatastu, may it be so. Shivoham, I am that. See you all again.